Senator from Alaska.
Madam President, thank you for presiding. I know this might be one of the last presiding duties of the year, so I appreciate you spending the time on the floor before you get to go home. And I want to talk about two issues today here on the Senate floor. One is a really important one. It's a policy issue that we have to solve. And what I'm trying to do today is just make sure my colleagues, because a lot of them get kind of fed some misinformation on this issue, and then the American people writ large know what's going on so we can fix this issue. And I'm hoping the White House and the administration, Treasury Department, everybody's watching, because this is an easy one. Imagine this, Madam President, if someone came to you and said, all right, let's see, is there legislation that we could pass that would help end slave labor in China with the Uyghurs, help make sure we had a really strong environment for our oceans and our fisheries, help make sure we weren't funding the Russian war machine to go kill innocent civilians in Ukraine, help make sure we keep strong American coastal communities, and help promote the great American fishermen who work so hard all over this great nation, been doing it way before the founding of the Republic. If there's legislation that could do all those things, wouldn't you want to support it? Oh, and by the way, undermine our adversaries, the two big adversaries we have, Russia and China. Is there legislation pending in the U.S. Senate that could do all of these things? The answer is yes. Hell yes. And I just want to make sure all my colleagues know, because when I bring this to the floor, when we come back in the new year, I just want to make sure everybody supports it, because it's a no-brainer. It is a no-brainer. So, Madam President, what am I talking about? Well, it's my U.S.-Russian Federation Seafood Reciprocity Act. Got a bunch of co-sponsors, Democrats and Republicans. Senator Cantwell is a big promoter of this, just for one example. But let me just give a little bit of background, because people are saying, I'm sure, wait, you have a piece of legislation you can do all that? Yeah, sure do. And why anyone would not support it? Well, once they get educated, they'll support it. So let's talk about it just very briefly. So, Madam President, what's the background here? I'm going to go way back, almost 10 years. So the Russians invade Crimea. You got the aggressive dictator Vladimir Putin trying to invade everybody, right? We got to make sure he doesn't win in Ukraine. The Obama administration smacks them with sanctions. Okay, I wasn't here then, but that's what happened. This is in 2014. But I supported that. And then the Russians retaliate. Now, one of the things they did when they retaliated is that they said, we're going to ban the importation of all American seafood into Russia. Now, Russia's got a big seafood market. Okay, so Russia said no American seafood can come into Russia. By the way, my state is the superpower of seafood. The great state of Alaska is responsible for the harvest of over 2/3 of all fish and seafood in America. 2/3, 66%. We are the superpower of seafood. Now, there's a lot of other great states that export seafood. I'm not sure the great state of Nevada does, but that's a whole other topic. This is really important to my constituents. Tens of thousands of my great constituents are involved with this. So imagine that. Russia is still allowed to import in the United States, almost duty-free, and we can't export one fish. Okay, that's been the situation since 2014. Right there, that's just unfair. Okay, so I try to work with the Obama administration, the Trump administration, the Biden administration to fix this. Unfair. By the way, the Russian seafood guys were eating into our fishermen's market in our own home, in our own U.S. market. Not fair. And by the way, we have American fishermen, Alaskan fishermen, have the highest standards by far in the world on the environment, on sustainable fisheries, on the management of fisheries in our oceans. This is something Senator Whitehouse and I have passed a lot of legislation on worker rights. Okay, highest in the world. It's not even close. So the highest standards on the planet, right in America, right in Alaska. Russia, China, I'm going to get to them, lowest in the world. Okay, so keep that in mind as we talk about this issue. Okay, so then it literally takes a war to fix this. Russia brutally invades Ukraine. The Biden administration is putting together a sanctions package. I call the White House and say, hey, look, how about including in your sanctions package a way to fix this unfair trade situation where Russia won't allow us to import one fish and they can export into the United States all they want? No way. So to his credit, President Biden said, or his team, hey, I agree with Senator Sullivan. Let's smack them with sanctions on fish. So the Biden initial executive order hitting Russia after they invaded Ukraine said Russia can't import in the United States. Great. I've been working on that for 10 years, and it's only fair. So what happens? These sneaky authoritarians. By the way, the Russian seafood industry is controlled by oligarchs who are literally taking a lot of that money and funding it for the Putin war machine. So remember that, my colleagues who might want to object to this later. Money going to fund the Putin war machine from fisheries. Okay, that's a fact. So anyways, the little sneaky authoritarian regimes, Putin, Xi Jinping, they're working together. They're like, hey, let's avoid those American sanctions. We'll take the Russian seafood caught by Russian fishermen in Russian waters, and we'll send it to China. And we'll have slave labor in China transform it, and then we'll send it to the United States. We'll sneak around those sanctions. Big loophole, using slave labor. So that's what they're doing right now. They're doing it every day. Hundreds of millions of dollars, if not in the billions, are avoiding these sanctions by saying, let's take the Russian seafood, worst environmental standards in the world, we'll send it to China, we'll use slave labor by the Uyghurs to transform it, and we'll call it Chinese fish, and then we'll send it into the American market. That is happening right now. Right now. So my legislation is simple. Closes the loophole. And by the way, Madam President, it's a really good idea because word's getting out that the Chinese fishing industry is a disaster. They take these big fleets, they go all over the world, they ravage the high seas, they ravage fisheries wherever they go. They're like, what's a good analogy? I don't know, rats in the water, right? They destroy the high seas fisheries. They go off the coasts of smaller countries in South America and Africa who don't have coast guards, can't enforce anything. They're literally like the abuser of the ocean in the world, China, okay? And then they use slave labor. How do I know? Because there has been article after article just in the last several weeks. Politico did a great article I'd like to submit for the record after my remarks, Madam President. This one's called, it's in Politico magazine, How Uyghur Forced Labor Makes Seafood That Ends Up in American School Lunches. I'd like to submit that for the record, Madam President.
Without objection.
There's New Yorker's done great work on this. One was titled, The Crimes Behind the Seafood You Eat. It's from the New Yorker. Americans know little about their seafood, how it's sourced. Much of it comes from a vast fleet of Chinese ships. On board, human rights abuses are rampant. I'd like to submit that for the record, Madam President.
Without objection.
And then another one from the New Yorker, the Uyghurs forced to process the world's fish. Okay? Slave labor. You know the Chinese, they try to dominate everything. They're trying to dominate the fishing industry at the expense of my fishermen. Unfair practices. The Uyghurs forced to process the world's fish. This is from the New Yorker in October of this year. The subheading is China forces minorities from Xinjiang province to work in industries around the country. As it turns out, this includes handling much of the seafood sent to America and Europe. I'd like to submit that for the record, Madam President.
Without objection.
So this is what's going on. Now, look, there's always a few companies out there, including in our great nation, and I'm not besmirching them or anything, but, they kind of whine. And remember, this happened at the beginning of the Ukraine war. You might remember, Madam President, a lot of us, Democrats and Republicans, are like, hey, let's make sure we stop the Russian war machine, because right now America's importing a lot of Russian oil, okay? And the Europeans, the Germans in particular, saying, and we're importing a lot of Russian gas. So some of us are like, well, hey, we're going to cut that off. Let's cut that off. Let's nail them. And you might remember at the beginning of the war, people were saying, even in this country, Biden administration, folks, well, we can't really cut off Russian oil. That'll hurt the American economy. What about those importers of Russian oil in America, those refineries who use Russian oil? What about those guys? In the Germans, same thing. Well, we can't really cut off the importation of Russian gas because, well, shoot, we use it. Now, not a lot of people were buying those arguments. I certainly wasn't. And the way we got around those arguments was, well, wait a minute. We know that's going to be a little painful, but here's an idea. Let's not import Russian oil. Let's use American oil. Let's use more oil from Alaska. We have way higher environmental standards, way higher worker standards. And you Germans, don't import Russian gas. Don't fund the Putin war machine. We'll send you LNG from America. So the Germans, the Biden administration, everybody was like, that's a good idea. So what do? We cut off Russian oil. In Europe, they cut off Russian gas. That's hurting those guys. That's good. And what did we do? We said, let's fill it up with American oil and gas. So why am I using that as an analogy? Because we have a couple companies. Look, and I get it. But as I said when I debated Senator Markey a couple months ago, it's not a good business model, America. American fish importers, trust me, not a good business model to be using slave labor, Uyghur seafood from China. At a certain point, Captain D's, you're one of the companies, it's going to catch up with you. It's going to catch up with you. Not a good business model to be helping fund the Putin war machine. So I know there's a few companies out there saying, oh, we don't like the Sullivan bill. Shoot. Really? So what's the answer? It's the same answer. We have great American fishermen who can make sure you guys, Captain D's, or whoever else, I guess some in Virginia, you get fish. Don't worry. By the way, it's a much higher standard. I just learned today that a lot of the Russian fish sent to China, it gets injected with 40% phosphates in water to plump it up, to make it look more plump. That's disgusting. And then it gets sent to America, maybe to Captain D's. So my point here is, we're not out to hurt you. We can say, use American producers. Use great American fishermen from all over, not just Alaska, Maine, Virginia, California, Oregon, Washington State. Use them. Don't block this legislation. Don't be a Putin lackey. Don't help fund the war machine. Don't help Xi Jinping's forced labor, slave labor, with the Uyghurs. Buy American, for goodness sakes. Stand with American fishermen. So, when we come back, I'm going to work this hard. And for all of you, and there's not many, but a few importers, I hope NFI is not doing this either. I hear they are, which would be really bad because they're supposed to promote the exporters too. That's the National Fisheries Institute. But what you need to do is not block this. This is a freight train, right? And it's going to pass. You want to get out of the way and you want to help. Stand with American fishermen. Let us in Alaska supply your company. Don't rely on slave labor, China fish. Don't rely on authoritarian aggression, Putin-backed seafood from Russia with low environmental standards. By the way, they're flooding the markets globally because they're worried, and they're hurting fishermen in America for sure. My fishermen, my fishing communities in my state are really hurting right now. This can help them. So, Madam President, we've been working on this hard. A lot of my Republican, Democratic colleagues are 100% with me. Like I said, there's a few importers who are kind of working the halls here, and my answer is, come on, be patriotic, stand with America, stand with American fishermen. Let's do legislation that can, what did I say at the beginning of my remarks? Now do you understand? Help defeat slave labor, help the environment, help strong American fishermen, help worker rights, and go after Russian and Chinese abuses in the seafood industry. It is all over the place. It's only going to grow more widespread in terms of the knowledge. The American people saying, wait a minute, do I want to eat fish that's slave labor fish? Putin oligarch fish? No. I want to buy fish, by the way, the highest standard in the world by far. We don't inject 40% phosphates into this fish, make it disgusting. I want to stand with American fishermen and buy seafood from Americans. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to close that loophole. Madam President, it's a big issue. Thanks for listening. But I sure hope when we get back that my colleagues will fully support it. I think 99.9% of them already do. And that's the right answer. It's the right thing for our country and the right thing for America's fishermen. Okay, Madam President, I'm going to end my remarks today on a high note, a very important one. So it's Thursday, and I like to come down Thursday and do what we call the Alaskan of the Week. Now, I can see the pages are already kind of excited, right? Because let's face it, this is the most exciting speech of the week, and certainly the most interesting. And so what I like to do is come down, and by the way, I know the press generally likes it because they is normally a signal that it's the end of the week, right? Everybody's going home. This is usually the last speech of the week. I think this might be the last speech of the year this year. So what we do with the Alaskan of the Week, we talk a little bit about what's going on in Alaska. I'll get to that. And then I like to highlight someone who's doing something great for my state. Might be, someone local. Our first Alaskan of the Week, I think, was a librarian who'd been a librarian for 40 years. Amazing woman, right? And then we have, superstar world athletes, gold medalists in swimming and things like that. So we just cover the whole gambit. Now, usually there's a poster board. I made this a very special Alaska of the Week poster board. This might be the first time ever it's got Santa on it. And you're going to see why. Santa-oriented speech. So, of course, right now, I'm getting ready to head home in a couple hours. I was just home over the weekend. No worries in Alaska right now about a white Christmas. Anchorage, my hometown, I think we've had close to 100 inches of snow already. Now, look, for us, that's a lot. I'm talking about November, right? So we got a white Christmas coming for sure. It's magical, of course, in Alaska. We've got reindeer. We've got one that actually lives in downtown Anchorage. We got visitors coming. And we've got a great town called North Pole, Alaska. North Pole, Alaska. And we have the Santa Claus house in North Pole, where Santa lives. And by the way, this is true. This is what my Alaskan of the Week speech is all about. If you write a letter to Santa addressed to the North Pole, your letter will end up at the Santa Claus house in North Pole, Alaska. Why wouldn't it? By the way, this house is not to be confused with the abode of a North Pole City Council member. North Pole, Alaska is a city a little bit north of Fairbanks. And this city council member, by the way, his name is Santa Claus. His legal name is Santa Claus. He is a member of the city council. I know him well. Look, I'm not ripping him. He's a Bernie Sanders socialist. True. Now, why wouldn't it be? The guy gives out free gifts to everybody. So that's true. It's true. He's a good guy. So Santa, if you're watching, hello, Santa Claus, city council member at North Pole. But, Madam President, in all seriousness, interior Alaska, this is the interior part of our state, has the greatest, most kind people, generous, and in keeping with the spirit of Christmas, our Alaskan of the Week is the Miller family, who is the owner of Santa Claus House in North Pole, Alaska, which has been a fixture in our state and really for the country for over 70 years. 70 years, the Miller family, who founded Santa Claus House has been running it for 70 years, making North Pole, Alaska, literally what it is today. They built the whole community. So let me help you get into the holiday spirit by describing just how magical the Santa Claus House in North Pole, Alaska really is. You drive down St. Nicholas Drive, okay, not kidding, by St. Nicholas Catholic Church, by the way. You'll see a huge house lined with red trim and murals of a reindeer and Santa's sleigh. Just outside is a barn with a real reindeer, a massive decked-out Christmas tree, and a 42-foot tall Santa Claus statue welcoming you to Santa's workshop. Now, the magic does not end there. Inside the house, you're greeted by a Christmas tree decorated with every ornament you can imagine, a live countdown to Christmas Day, of course. Why wouldn't there be one? Every day of the year. And a professional Santa Claus ready to hear every Christmas wish from the thousands of visitors, and I'm not just talking Alaskans, Americans, people from all over the world who visit Santa Claus House in North Pole, Alaska every year. And you're also likely to meet and see several members of the extended Miller family working to make the Santa Claus House the winter wonderland it is. And Madam President, they've been doing it for 4 generations to keeping the spirit of Christmas alive. Let me take you back 4 generations to the original founder of Santa Claus House. That's Con and Nellie Miller. Born in 1913, Con and his mother just didn't see eye to eye. They decided that it was best that he join the Navy. Now, Madam President, he joined when he was 15, a little young, and this is just in the great Alaska spirit. You know, I've talked about it a lot over the years. We have more veterans per capita than any state in the country. So being in the military and a veteran is very normal in Alaska. It's a great part of our culture. And this young guy, Con, left Colorado, spent 3 years in the Navy, starting at the age of 15. How he got in, I have no idea. He was on a gunboat in China. Then he got out. Then Pearl Harbor happened. And of course, he's a patriot, so he rejoined the Navy. He fought in the South Pacific during the Second World War. So great American, greatest generation individual, Con Miller. After the war ended, Con and his wife Nellie ended up in Fairbanks with the goal of running a clothing store. To supplement their income, Con sold clothes in the surrounding rural villages, often donning a red Santa suit each Christmas. He quickly earned celebrity status as the local Santa Claus in interior Alaska, the first that many children had ever seen, ever in rural Alaska. In 1952, the Millers built a trading post 13 miles south, I said north, south of Fairbanks in the newly named North Pole, Alaska. So, just a little south of Fairbanks, the big city in the interior. One day while working hard at his new store, a young Alaskan boy recognized Con and asked, "Well, hello, Santa. Are you building a new house?" Inspiration clicked, and Con thought, hey, why not? Let's do this. And so the Santa Claus House was born. In addition to purchasing groceries, locals could mingle at the soda fountain and pick up their daily mail at the Santa Claus House, and under the direction of postmistress Nellie Miller, Con's, a.k.a. Santa's wife, was a mail contract station that served North Pole's first post office for almost 20 years. So there you have it. North Pole, Alaska became a post office for America. The Miller family lived above the store and were essential to its operation. All 3 kids, Terry, Mike, and Mary, yes, Mary, Christmas, spelled M-E-R-R-Y, not M-A-R-Y, worked alongside their parents. Despite their insight behind the scenes as employees, current owner and manager Mike said they believed in Santa as much as anyone else. Of course they did. Everybody believes in Santa. As North Pole grew, and it is growing, it's a great community, like I said, just a few miles outside of Fairbanks, the Santa Claus House grew with it. Inside, the store's emphasis on Christmas delights slowly replaced the aisles of canned goods. Meanwhile, the Miller family established themselves as pillars of the North Pole community. Not only North Pole, but all of interior Alaska. Con Miller served as the mayor of North Pole for 19 years, the city's longest-serving mayor, while Nellie Miller acted as a marriage commissioner for the community. Now, back then, that was a real job, marriage commissioner. Eventually, both of their sons, Terry and Mike, also found politics. The late Terry Miller was a state legislator. He was president of the state Senate and was elected to be our lieutenant governor in 1978. Mike, who was helping run the Santa Claus House, also served in the legislature as Senate president from 1983 to 2001. This is a dominating political family in Alaska, 2 state Senate presidents. I knew the Millers, they're great, great family, both Miller brothers, very highly respected, across the aisle. This is and was and has been a great family committed to public service. Madam President, begun over 70 years ago by Con and Nellie Miller, the Santa Claus House continues as following generations of Millers keep up that Christmas spirit and keep it thriving in North Pole, Alaska. And it's still a family-run business. Mike Miller is looking forward to the next generation continuing to run the family business with his daughter Carissa and son-in-law Paul, and staffed by several grandchildren. Isn't this just a wonderful story? Really warms your heart as we head into the holiday season. We all know Santa's job is a hard one, and it's also no small job running the Santa Claus House for the world. In addition to the family, there are between 40 and 60 employees year-round working there. Besides being a delightful tourist attraction worldwide, the Santa Claus House understands the true meaning of Christmas and uses its name for recognition, and uses its name recognition for good works in the community, organizing food drives for the Fairbanks Food Bank that is used throughout interior Alaska and many other issues of charity. Mike said, I think we have really worked hard to bring the spirit of Santa to our community, the spirit of giving and family and caring about one another. I hope we have done a small slice in this service of helping people realize that Christmas is about caring, about giving to one another, and about being good neighbors. That's Mike Miller. Well, they've done that, Madam President, in a huge way. They've done more than give a small slice. For the past 70 years, they've given their all towards spreading the magic, the wonder, and the joy of Christmas to Alaskans, to Americans, to a people all over the world. So thank you to the Miller family and to the incredible institution of the Santa Claus House in North Pole for making our state a more jolly place, a more generous place, a more caring place, and for keeping the spirit of Christmas alive, not just now during the holidays, but year-round in the great state of Alaska. And of course, to the Millers and Santa Claus House, congratulations on being our Alaskan of the Week. I yield the floor.